Hello, my name is Marya Endriga, and I am the Associate Dean for Student and Personnel Success in the College of Social Sciences and Interdisciplinary Studies at Sacramento State. Thank you so much for coming to this presentation on steps in career growth for academic affairs professionals. I wish we could be together in person today. So we have a chance to get to know each other and have some discussion. But I'm always happy to have you contact me to correspond that way by email, for example, and I have my information at the end of the slide. And so, yes, thanks again for coming. I have been at my university at Sacramento State for 24 years. But I am not an HR professional. So that's important to know in terms of the approach that I'm taking to this presentation. I came up through the faculty ranks into administration. So that is from assistant professor to associate to full to department chair, and now as an associate dean. And my experience with staff over the many years is mostly through my department chair and associate dean work. I have some longtime friendships, mentoring relationships, and other collegial relationships with staff, and some of whom, one that you'll meet today in an interview, some of whom are former students. So that's a little bit the lens from where I'm coming from. But I also think that identity is an important set of lenses too. So I consider myself to be a somewhat older woman of color. My ethnicity is Filipina American. I'm also trained as a psychologist, which is an important lens for me. And as an associate dean, I consider myself a middle level administrator. As an overview of our session today, my main objective is for us together to appreciate the complexity of the career journey for staff at a university and to offer you some, what I call some intentional actions or recommendations that hopefully will help you enhance your growth opportunities. As I mentioned, I have a former student who is now an administrator, and I'm featuring her in an interview, and you'll see segments and hear pieces of her story as we go along. I also like to cover a little psychology on how we make decisions and choices, both for our careers and perhaps in our lives as a whole. And I will trace some common career paths of academic affairs professionals. I say academic affairs, but these are also job classifications that occur in other divisions too, like in business affairs or in student affairs. I'd like to make some points about equity and inclusion, particularly because women and people of color tend to be well represented in the set of staff classifications. And as I mentioned, I'll make some recommendations for intentional actions you can do within your current position that don't necessarily involve turning your life upside down, but hopefully that you will feel will be helpful. In this slide, I'm titling it, do you see yourself? And here are just a few graphic images that I've pulled out that might appeal to you. Some of them might make you shake your head. So I just was going to make a couple of comments. On the top left, you see what's considered probably a traditional approach to career. There is a person at the bottom stair. The stairs are are the same size. You can look ahead to see what your next step is. The implication here is you just have what you need, and with your effort, you can climb to the top to your ultimate career goal. I don't know about you, but I would say not many of us would see ourselves along this very clear and well laid out path. You might see yourself like the slide below. This is actually a graphic that's fairly popular in social media these days. These are definitions of success. So you can see what people think success looks like is this upwardly moving straight arrow line. And then what most people experience success really looking like is more like this very squiggly line that doubles back on itself and dips and in places. So maybe that is where you see yourself. On the upper right hand side, I kind of like this picture because it acknowledges that a career path isn't just a straight arrow or set of stairs, that it's built of many different things. If you can see some of the icons in here, you can see family, you can see someone's goals, ideas they have, financial needs, other things that are represented. The part here I question, though, is that if you notice, these are gears and the gears are all connected. And the impression this gives that all of these pieces in our lives are somehow a well-oiled machine where the pieces are connected, and when one piece spins, the other pieces spin too. Again, I don't know about you, but many of us feel like life just doesn't always work, if ever, work like a well-oiled set of gears that all turn in synchrony. You might wish, or you might see yourself as this picture in the middle, where you see a woman who looks very peaceful and calm, who feels like her life is in balance. So she's balancing her heart, her relationships, time to relax, her financial needs, just regular things she needs to do in her day, and her work, that somehow achieving a peaceful balance. Maybe we aspire to this. I don't know. Decide, you can think to yourself and reflect, is this how I see myself now? And I couldn't really resist to add the picture on the lower right, partly because I'm kind of a fan of sticky notes. And they tend to get unstuck and fly around my workspace and congregate on my desk, and not particular any order. And so maybe you see yourself this way, that you just have a lot of sticky notes and you know that they need to get done. And this one big sticky note, this general message that you're just supposed to somehow make things happen. So again, take a bit of time to decide where you might see yourself. How is it that you see your own career in the context of your life, and the other important pieces of it, how you see it all working together. So at this point, I'd like you to meet Frances, and you'll see part of my interview with her. And I'd like you to listen to the first part of her journey as she traces her career through beginning as a student assistant and then into the staff ranks.
So I just want to start off that I was a student assistant, and I was student assistant for the College of Social Science and Interdisciplinary Studies, College of SSIS, and I worked with Dr. Endriga, and I was a student assistant, graduated in 2015, and of course, during my trajectory or my career path, I'm going to talk about the different workplace teachable moments, so my WTMs. And because these WTMs, I think they strengthen my portfolio of where I am at today. So if I had any recommendations I could share, it would be to take advantage of any and all professional development conferences, courses, trainings, anything. Because if it hadn't been for Mike and Margaret pushing me to go to Apache and Leap Advanced, I don't think I would have applied for this position. I think honestly I would have been still at the VP's office for ABA. I wouldn't have moved because I would have been scared, because it's just like I don't know what I don't know. So for them to push me into these leadership roles, and also still pushing me into other leadership roles, it's humbling. And also, if you know of any affinity groups, I would join the affinity groups that you're most comfortable with. Like with Dr. Endriga, I'm part of the APITA, Asian Pacific Islander Desi American Faculty Senate Association. And I like to be around this group, and the reason why is because it's around prominent people, innovators like Dr. Endriga, and other professors, deans. It's just, I like to be around them because I like to see women of color, women, PITA women, to to where I can look at them like, you know what, I can get to where she's at because she got there. That means I can get there, and she's opening the door for not only me but for other APITA women.
I hope you enjoyed listening to a little bit and getting to know Frances. This slide is about how the different ways, at least in psychology and in organizational psychology, we think about how people make career decisions and how they make choices. And each of these sets of descriptors can be seen as being on a continuum from rational to intuitive, from individual to collective, etc. And if we think about Frances, what she's told us in her story, I see aspects of her decision making that sound rational. Like she thinks about what does she need to do to get prepared for applying to this next job, and she might do some ask questions and look at websites and to prepare herself. But on the other hand, some of the way she looks at her career growth sounds like she thinks things just happen by chance. She's been given opportunities because somebody left for a maternity leave, for example. So it could be that you really vary in where you are on these different continuums. So rational versus intuitive. Now think about rational. Are you a list maker? Do you weigh pros and cons when you make a decision? Or do you tend to go with your gut? Do you feel when a decision is right? Do you respect and allow intuition to be your guide? And you can think about that a minute. The next continuum is what I'm labeling individual, autonomous, or isolated. This means, do you tend to put your individual needs, goals, desires, wants to the front? Do you feel like you are allow yourself to make decisions fairly autonomously, thinking about what it is that you need? On the other end of the continuum is a framework where you feel more embedded in your context, that in a collective sense of who you are in the context of your relationships, your family, your neighborhood, your culture, your community, for example. And do you put those issues to the front when you are faced with a decision about your career? The next set of descriptors is intentional, and I mentioned this before. Are you strategic in your planning and systematic in how you go about uh, thinking about your career growth? Or do you just think the kind of person thinks if it was meant to be, it will be, and largely feel like opportunities may come and go as a result of chance or sometimes fate? And the next set of descriptions is about sometimes we need to make decisions for our primary survival needs. Maybe when you were starting out a family, or whether you were beginning your career, you really had to possibly think more about putting food on the table, a roof over your head, what your financial situation is like. Versus the other side of this continuum is the extent to which your personal fulfillment is allowed to take precedence. So what is it that you need in a job to feel fulfilled, to feel satisfied, to feel, say, intellectually and socially stimulated? Again, you can think of this on a continuum. And these aren't hard traits, right? So our particular situation might determine where we fall on this set of spectrums or what stage of life we're in. Um, so just to keep in mind, these aren't hard and fast. So let's listen to Frances again. And again, like I say, you'll see aspects of her rational preparation, how she values her work ethic, but how she also feels the opportunities just happened for her.
The challenges, I think, well, I know that I face as a woman of color is in the back of my mind, it's, am I good enough? There's always that one little nagging voice saying, you're not ready for that. Just back up and just be in your little circle, in your little office, and be comfortable with that. And that's the thing where I think along with other women of colors, that would get comfortable with the position that we're in, that sometimes we're probably too afraid to attain that higher level position. And I think it's just all about finding that one mentor. And if I didn't confide or I trust in like Margaret, or mainly Margaret, who was my boss at the VP's office, I don't think I would have gotten through the analyst position or this, because um, of course there was a lot of challenges to this position, to where it was intimidating. And I think the intimidation factor, the fear factor of, am I good enough? Can I even consider myself an MPP? How would my peers look to me? How would they take to me now that I'm an MPP? How would the peers that I used to work with, now I'm their boss? So it's that delicate, like you said, Dr. Endriga, the bridge from analyst to MPP. There's a lot of factors that you got to think about. There's a lot of factors that I thought about.
In addition to that set of um, arrows or spectrum that had just talked about, we can also think about what some career coaches call influencers. So these could be internal or external factors. Sometimes we consider them pressures. Sometimes we're just aware of the influence these things have on our decisions. I kind of like the idea of representing them as butterflies. Well, partly because I really liked the picture of the woman with butterflies in her hair. The fact that butterflies there tends to be a lot of them that kind of fly around our heads, maybe even in a swarm at times, and that they're just there. They're there, and that we notice them. They influence us. Some of these influencers may be pretty straightforward, like making a decision in your career based on what your family needs are. Um, this could impact the geography of whether or not you're able to move to pursue a job. If your partner is settled or if your children are settled in school, possibly geography becomes a big influencer. Also, the amount of finances that are necessary, what drives you to stay in one position or to seek another, could be financial. But some influencers are more internal, like we are influenced by what we feel our needs are. As we mentioned, needs for fulfillment, for example, and what our values are. What are our values for the work that we do? Do we see we have a value for providing service, for being in jobs that serve others or serve an important function, even if it's behind the scenes? And so that might be an example of a value. And also our identities of who we are can also influence us. Our gender, our age, our ethnicity. These are things that might influence us and become internal guides because they're part of our identities, but they also might be sources of restriction or limitation. And I'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about issues of equity and inclusion. This is a slide that just lays out a common staff career progression, at least in academic affairs. And I think Frances's story, she actually covers all of these positions in a fairly short period of time, which I think is a bit unusual, but I liked her story in terms of how she approached her career, and I wanted to share it with you. So if we just look at, and again, I'm presenting these as stairs, on the left hand side, Frances, as well as maybe some of you, started as student assistants. And because of your capabilities, your dedication, your talent, you were able to secure a professional position, say as administrative support assistant or ASA. The defining feature of an ASA, as you may already know, is that this is a general position where you have varying levels of responsibility for office work and clerical support. The next step, so if you move from an ASC, say ASA 1 to a 2, you may then be interested in an administrative support coordinator or ASC position. And here, the defining feature is that you are maybe likely to be the lead in the office, that not only do you carry out the work of the office, but you have responsibility for coordinating that work and likely to have responsibility over other staff. So that would be an ASC. Moving then to the next level are the administrative analyst positions. Administrative analyst, a budget analyst, administrative specialist. And here, some of the hallmarks would be working with data, conducting research, analyzing results, doing planning for a budget or for a unit, and having reporting responsibilities. If you came up another bridge, possibly, or similar level in this career path would be a student services professional or an SSP. These could be counselors, advisors, staff members who work very closely with students. You also could be, as an SSP, developing support programs for students. And then considered at the top of the hierarchy at a university are the administrators, which in the CSU are called MPPs, or management personnel plan. And these are managers, supervisors, people with administrative authority for making decisions. They may have full budgetary responsibility and authority. They will be formulating, developing, and administering various policies and programs. I also have little diplomas here marked at the points in this progression where additional schooling or educational attainment or a degree may be necessary. So obviously, moving from a student assistant prior to your degree to a bachelor's degree may make you, or should make you, competitive for an ASA position. Moving from an ASC position into an analyst position may require an advanced degree or the equivalent in experience. So, for example, a master's degree here. For an SSP, likely a master's degree in a counseling or related field. And then the next education point may be, for some MPP positions, the expectation there would be, again, a master's degree or a doctorate. I have a little icon here in the bottom right. I don't know if you can see it. It's a unicorn. And I kind of say this tongue in cheek because in talking to staff, we acknowledge that some progressions are easier than others. Moving from a student assistant to an ASA is not that difficult. Moving from an ASA to an ASC is a very established pathway. However, moving from an ASC to an analyst or to an MPP position, some people refer to those as unicorns because you hear it's possible, but you've actually never seen one happen. So again, Frances is an interesting story in that she did move into analyst and MPP positions. But we acknowledge the higher up you go in this situation, the less opportunities they are at your particular university. So you may be getting pressure or suggestions that you start to look more broadly at other CSUs, for example, if you may want to make that move. I wanted to stop and talk with you a bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm afraid that the news isn't great, but there are just some realities for staff in the positions that I've been describing that I think are worth mentioning. I think we all know that higher education as an organization and an institution is very hierarchical. You can just look up the organizational chart for your university or your unit, and you can see where the lines of authority and supervision, the lines of communication are very set. As I mentioned before, in the staff ranks, you're more likely to have representation of women and people of color. When you have that situation, oftentimes, and the university is no exception, you have opportunity gaps and pay gaps. And there are several recent articles on higher education that document the unequal distributions of women and people of color in higher education, where, again, the higher up you go in the hierarchy, the less likely you will see women or people of color, and also the gaps in pay. So we would have a national gender gap, I think, of around 80 to 81 cents for every one of those 81 cents, say, for made by a woman is associated with $1 made by a man. So this is how we often quantify what a pay gap looks like. And in a recent study, it looks like women and even men of color make about 90 cents for every dollar that are earned by white men in higher education, even those in the same job type. For white women, earn about 95 cents to every dollar earned by a white male. So um, while we have equal opportunity protections and laws against discrimination, the pay gap is still a problem for universities and something to be um, that's good to keep in mind. I wanted to talk to you about the sticky floor. You may have heard about the glass ceiling, which is this idea that women and people of color may only advance to a certain level before they, feel like there are barriers. But as the sticky floor was coined, I think in the early 1990s, to document the fact that usually women, actually women at lower levels of organizations, including higher education, have a harder time moving up to that first supervisory level than people who start at a middle level of management to move to a higher level. So this is the stickiness of the floor that sticks women and people of color into the lower levels of the staff hierarchy, making it again more difficult um, to move into a supervisory position. There are some indirect impacts to that too. And this is not just explained by the level of education. That is also a disparity between for women and people of color, but it also could be factors around the hiring that women's qualifications may be less traditional and therefore may be overlooked. And also, something I think is relevant for all of us, women are shown to be less likely to verbalize what their goals and desires are for being considered for supervisory positions and for advancement. We also know that women tend to wait until they know they are qualified and ready for a position, maybe feel like they have to wait till they're 200% ready before they go up for a promotion or a new position. Women are more likely to be more conservative in that way than men. I have here on the slide talking about soft discrimination and microaggressions. These are things that could be very well meaning that happen in your workplace that aren't likely to rise to the level where you feel like it's something that needs to be reported to your office of equal opportunity. But these can even just be subtle messages to you as a staff member that that uh, that work against the support for for thinking that it would be okay to advance your careers. I mean, even something where your supervisor says, "Oh, we love you so much. We couldn't ever possibly think of you leaving. You're like a mother to this department. You take care of all of us. I don't know what we would do without you." Again, those are messages of love and care, but they can also make you feel like, oh, maybe it means that I can't leave. Other messages could be something like, well, I didn't recommend you for that position because I know how busy you are with your family. And, I didn't think that that was something that you would want to take on at this point in your life. Things like that could actually be issues of, maybe discriminatory and inhibit you from thinking about advancement. So keep those in mind. And, if you feel like they're present, it might be good to talk to someone, a mentor, or someone else to talk about how you would actually handle a situation like that if it comes up. And here I'm asking, how inclusive is your blank? Then here, when we think about inclusion, we're moving a little bit beyond just thinking about equity, which is like what is essentially fair, or we're moving beyond diversity, which means our end goal is to diversify the workplace. We're really also thinking about inclusion now, which is setting up work environments and work conditions that are inclusive and encompass the identities and needs of all of us. And so you can think about, how flexible is your work schedule? What is the telecommute policy, and how open, for example, if that's something that you need? How inclusive is your office space? How is it, set up? How inclusive are the values at your workplace in terms of how we communicate with one another, and how we run our operations? Just things to think about. Inclusion is a really important concept. In this slide, I've titled it Distinguishing Features Between Job Levels and Classifications. This gets to a recommendation I have, which is, for those job classifications, go on the Cal State website, download what those classifications are, compare the different classifications and the levels within them. What you'll find is that there are certain features generally that distinguish one level from another and one classification from another that don't have to do with actual tasks of your job. These are things that you may be able to build in and think about and prepare for if you are thinking about promoting or advancing. So first of all, the jobs can be distinguished at the level of complexity, breadth, and depth of what those tasks are. For example, the difference between ASA and ASC does have to do with the complexity of the tasks, and how you are expected to carry them out. Also, the amount of independence and autonomy that you practice, like how much you're supposed to be able to just do independently without a lot of supervision, that can distinguish a lower from a higher level. How much innovation and creativity is expected of you in the job. In other words, are you just expected, and I have this later down on the slide too, to just carry out a particular task, or are you expected to think about and problem solve around better ways to do a certain office process? And how much, I would think, innovation and creativity is welcome in all positions, but the extent to which this is really an expectation for your job is a factor. Another factor is how much you are expected to supervise others and coordinate projects and workflows. And also, I mentioned whether you're developing a process versus implementing a process. That can distinguish between lower and higher levels of a job classification. Clearly, the amount of responsibility you have, how much decision-making authority, and how much accountability do you have is also a distinguishing feature. I was associating that earlier on with an MPP position or an analyst position. And then finally, the amount of problem solving and judgment that you're expected to make, independent judgment, how much is allowed you. So, again, these are features that aren't necessarily um, based in any specific task, but are features of your own development, your own talents and skills that you can develop to some extent, no matter what position that you find yourself in now. I wanted to give you some recommendations or what I'm calling intentional actions for things that you can do in the position that you're in now, or things to keep in mind, uh, ways to stretch yourself and create opportunity. And we've heard a bit of that from Francis, who's been a guide and an interesting story along the way. I've just mentioned to please let yourself or become familiar with the position descriptions and staff classifications in the CSU system. And that list, pay attention to that list in the prior slide of what distinguishes the different levels. This will help you do what I'm calling stretch the boundaries of your position, but without working out of class. We're not supposed to work outside of our position description or our job classification, but within it, there may be opportunities to stretch those boundaries in those ways: creativity, ideas, developing things, thinking of opportunities to lead in whatever way is appropriate for your level. This can build your leadership and potential, build a sense of your that you are a capable, innovative, ambitious person. I believe Francis talked about this, and this is about this third point about using the performance evaluation process. Performance evaluation tends to be something that just happens annually. Maybe, boxes get checked, you take a look at it, you feel like it's all good, you sign off on it, and then you don't revisit it until the next year. And that would be a shame, because this is a built in formal way that and contract for you and your supervisor to set professional goals for yourself and give yourself an ongoing assessment. Frances has talked about um, performance evaluation as a really important tool in her growth and understanding. So, you know, this performance evaluation could be something that you check in on with your supervisor regularly throughout the year, because it will show that there are lists of goals, um, the pathways where you can meet those goals, what professional development needs that you will have for your goals. So it's a very good tool for that. I suggest that you work on building beyond your position. I don't not going outside of your position, but these are skill building activities that are maybe outside of your job description, but still within your position at the university. So taking advantages of in-service trainings and other trainings, taking opportunities to join committees and provide other service to your university. I know in our college, we started a staff council, which is also, I consider a form of service, as also shared governance to show your involvement at the university. It's also a really great way to network and meet people outside of your immediate office setting that can be people who will advocate for you for advancement or think of you when opportunities come up. So generally, campus involvement is a good idea, and opportunities for leadership. And I think Frances has talked about her mentor telling her to join a leadership association, and the kinds of confidence and opportunity that built for her. Please engage in explicit professional development activities. In my college, we set aside funds for staff annually to go to conferences, to take advantage, maybe even online. Frances recommended LinkedIn Learning as a really important tool for how you stretch your skills and prepare yourself for the next level. And I don't know about your campus. My campus subscribes to LinkedIn Learning. It is a free opportunity for professional development. So please talk with your supervisors in that goal setting process about what professional development would be good for you. Going to this conference obviously is an excellent professional development opportunity. Perhaps you're attending this year, but perhaps you could be presenting next year, and also something that builds your resume. I mentioned this, that having conversations with your supervisors and administrators about your goals explicitly. Uh, there It's also fine and actually recommended that if you are in a position to feel like you qualify for an in-range progression, or even maybe a reclassification of your position, this is something that is fine to talk about. Doesn't necessarily mean it will happen, but I know that your union representatives will encourage you to seek in-range progressions, and then have those conversations to a management initiated in-range progression. So again, I'm not an HR professional, but these are good conversations to have. And Frances made it very, very clear that building a solid mentoring network is really very important. Build that network across the university through the levels of involvement that you have, and be very intentional about seeking a mentor, and even just asking directly for mentoring. Because as you heard in Frances's story, that she doesn't think that many of these opportunities would have opened up for her, nor would she have had the confidence and the courage to apply for them without the push and support of a mentor. So I think that is also really important. And speaking of Frances, I enjoy her so much. I couldn't resist just pulling out a few quotes from the interview. I call it final wisdom. She encourages us all to know our worth, even though there are times when you feel like you may not be ready, you may not be good enough, and all those kind of internal gremlins that plague probably all of us. She recommends that you find that one mentor and pick her brain, use her wisdom. And I like that quote. Performance evaluation teaches you to take criticism, is another thing she mentioned, which I agree with and isn't a comfortable thing, but so important for your growth. Here's my favorite. Frances says, "Don't hold my hand, just give me a pinky finger." And I think that it's not expected, but even encouraged to really ask for help, ask for opportunity. Um, and again, it doesn't mean it won't fall in your lap, but I love that idea. Just give me a pinky finger. And then she also lastly encourages us to build and enhance your portfolio. Um, and she gives you examples of the ways in which she does this. So I'm going to let her tell you these things in her own words. So yeah, let's listen to Frances again.
My position as an analyst, I was able to build upon my portfolio with getting to know more about budget, more about HR, more about the different functionalities of ABA, to where I was able to just do it on my own and just build that wealth of knowledge that was coming to me. And then I was approached again with this position, and and I would say that the reason why I was approached is because of my work ethic. My work ethic was very, very important to me. It's shown in my work. It's shown. I exuded it because it was very important, because I wanted people to know that I'm a hard worker. And just like I stated before, it's from my military background. So I bring a strong, good work ethic. And so when I was approached this position, it was very intimidating. I did not want it because it was from an analyst to an MPP. Analyst, oh, I'm unionized, I'm safe, I can, lean in case anything happens, versus an MPP position where it's at will. That's what top priority, that was what really scaring me, because it's like, oh my God, what if I mess up and I'm fired just like off the whim? And I had to stop that. I had to just hush that noise, hush it, because that's not who I am. I love challenges, but this is my ultimate challenge. The challenges I think, well, I know that I face as a woman of color is in the back of my mind, it's, am I good enough? There's always that one little nagging voice saying, you're not ready for that. Just back up and just be in your little circle, in your little office, and be comfortable with that. And that's the thing where I think along with other women of colors, that would get comfortable with the position that we're in, that sometimes we're probably too afraid to attain that higher level position. And I think it's just all about finding that one mentor. And if I didn't confide or I trust in like Margaret, or mainly Margaret, who was my boss at the VP's office, I don't think I would have gotten through the analyst position or this, because um, of course there was a lot of challenges to this position, to where it was intimidating. And I think the intimidation factor, the fear factor of, am I good enough? Can I even consider myself an MPP? How would my peers look to me? How would they take to me now that I'm an MPP? How would the peers that I used to work with, now I'm their boss? So it's that delicate, like you said, Dr. Endriga, the bridge from analyst to MPP. There's a lot of factors that you got to think about. There's a lot of factors that I thought about. The amount of time spent at work, and in, talking to Margaret about my professional goals, my personal goals, because she's goal oriented, especially with her staff. She sits down with you, especially during performance eval time. It's a great tool, because it really taught me to learn about how to take criticism, and how to learn how to learn about the criticism, and also how to get myself to where Margaret is at. And she already saw that I can get to her level, and she sees that in all her staff. But for me, I told her, and I asked her, is it okay that you be my mentor? Because there's not a lot of people that want to be mentors. They just want to be, lead by example. Don't talk to me, just do as I say. Margaret's not like that. I'm not like that. So I needed somebody to really sit me down, teach me, tell me what to do, tell me how to get there, dispel all the negative talk energy that's coming in here, because not me thinking that I'm not good enough. And the reason why I chose and I went for her is because she has all this infinite knowledge, just like wisdom. Even though she's younger than me, she's been here on campus for 10 plus years. I wanted to gravitate towards that and like really pick her brain on everything. Again, thank you, Dr. Endriga, for this opportunity. I still look up to you, and I'm always going to look up to you. But I think the one takeaway from this, as you guys are progressing, or as anybody is progressing up the classification ladder, is to build and enhance. So you're going to want to build your portfolio, building as far as networking, resources, even external resources. Build all that portfolio, and then enhance that portfolio by networking. Networking is key. It's all about, and I know it's like cliche, it's all about who you know, when in reality it's really all about who you know. And then of course mentoring. Find that one mentor. That mentor will change your life. My-
And then, just as far as my own conclusion, this is back to the bigger picture of your journey. I was part of a middle leadership academy recently, and the mantra, the tagline that we were challenged to think about every session was to know your why. Know your why in terms of your career pathway. It may be that, as I'm going to say towards here at the end, it may be that you're fine where you are. It may be that you do want to seek advancement, but to know why, to know your purpose for your position and where you want to be. I hope this presentation has encouraged you to assess what your skills and experience are, gather more of them, stretch yourself, and then engage in regular reflection on your journey. And obviously, seeking and supporting mentorship is important. Career coaches often encourage you to run towards the fire. What that means is when an opportunity presents itself, no matter how scary and dangerous it may seem, they encourage you to run towards the fire. I don't know, that's a very scary image for me, but I will share one that I have. I don't know why it came in, but I remember when I was thinking about applying for this associate dean position, I remember telling a mentor and a friend, I feel like I'm a little scruffy little dog and I am stuck halfway in and out of a little doggy door. And I don't know whether to back up and go into the nice, warm, and familiar house and just stretch out in front of the fire and be comfortable and safe, or whether I want to push through that doggy door into the dark and the unknown for the promise of maybe something more exciting and better. And so I was stuck in that dog door for several months. And I did have a mentorship, my mentor laugh at me and say, Marya, you have all your life to back up and lie in front of a warm fire. You just push through that dog door. So I know it's not quite as dramatic as running towards a fire, but it suited me. And my last point I want to make is it's also perfectly fine to say, I'm good, to know where your career, your current position fits in the rest of your life priorities, and to know when you're good and to say, I'm good, to feel proud of that choice to stay where you are. And I know that is the story of many of our staff. And it's not that we want to boot you out of our lives. We just don't want to be barriers to if you want to advance. But of course, we're really very grateful when you do decide for yourselves to know when you're good. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation. This is my email address that you see on the slide. I did mention various articles and research studies. There really wasn't room to put them on the slide, so please feel free to email me for some of those citations. I wanted to give my sincere appreciations to the ARC organizers and the leadership and the board, some of whom I know. I appreciate your dedication and the creativity to make it work virtually this year. I hope it is a successful conference. Obviously, thank you to Frances Palou for being with me at this time and sharing her story. My coworker Heather Mumal, who's also a presenter at this conference. I've learned so much about staff through my relationship with Heather, who is also a former student, and she's also was a really valuable listening ear in the development of this particular presentation. And thank you to Primo Productions, Chuck Gallagher and Leah for your support technically to make this all happen. And also I'm giving you the sources for the copyright free graphics that you see in the presentation. So thank you very much.